Hello everyone, and thank you very much for joining us today. I'm Deborah Garlick from Henpicked Menopause in the Workplace, and author of the book Menopause, The Change for the Better. And the subject of today's Lunch and Learn is menopause and weight gain. And I have to say, when I asked Jackie Lynch about this, I was kind of being a little bit selfish, or I thought. It's something that's very important to me. The summer's coming up. Lockdown is well behind us, but unfortunately, some of the pounds are still there. But sometimes it's not as easy to shift as once upon a time it was. So I'm delighted to introduce Jackie Lynch, award-winning registered nutritional therapist, to ask us some questions. And as my colleague, my friend Sally said in the background, we want to answer your questions too. So please do put any questions in the chat, and we'll do our best to make sure we answer as many of them as we possibly can. So welcome, Jackie.
Hi, Deborah. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And I'm so pleased that we're on this subject, because I know, and I'm hopefully, and please tell us in chat, am I on my own here? Once upon a time, on a Monday, I could say, I'm going to wear that dress on Saturday and get into it without a problem, or decide, actually, I'm going on holiday in a month, I need to lose 2 dress sizes to be bikini ready. And you know what? It happened, but not so much anymore. And so that's definitely not on your own. Thank you very much. Thank goodness for that. That's really nice to know that I'm not on my own. But actually, what's going on? Jackie, does menopause make you put weight on?
Well, technically, the short answer is no, it doesn't. But what you have to recognize is that for most people, menopause happens at a certain stage in life. So it's more about your life stage, and the fact that as we start to age a little bit, our metabolism does start to slow down, whichever sex you are, quite honestly. But it's something that means that you simply can't get away with what you used to get away with. I mean, we all know that feeling that we had in our 20s when we were practically indestructible. You know, you could pull an all-nighter, be up as fresh as a daisy, you could lose half a stone in a week. These things just don't happen as easily as you get older. Now, partly that's down to metabolism. For some women, it's actually the fact that they may have been yo-yo dieting for many years. So actually they haven't helped their metabolism because it doesn't know what to expect anymore. And so it will just sort of slow down, because we're still programmed genetically for about 10,000 years ago. So it will think, oh, is there some kind of famine going on? You know, why is she not feeding me? And so it'll go into what I often call camel mode, which is where you'll just sort of store it for when the good time, you know, when the bad times come, so you can burn up that food. So that can be an issue. And then I think around the menopause, there are a number of other factors that can come into play. You know, very often women start to lose body confidence. They may not want to go to the gym and wear lycra and be amongst the younger women there. And that can be part of the factor. So they're not moving as much. There's the issue around the pelvic floor. You know, very often women start to have what's known as urinary stress incontinence, which is when you leak a little bit of urine when you laugh or run or sneeze. And that can put you off doing high impact exercise, things that might have helped to keep you in shape before. So it's a bit of a perfect storm of different factors that come in. And around about the menopause, there are a number of things that could be interfering with that. So it's less your sex hormones that are playing a part, but as well, I know we're going to come on to talk about stress in a bit more detail. Stress hormones do have a big part to play in this, and we're often a lot more stressed around midlife than we are earlier in our life. So that can be a factor too.
I know, and we did talk about that actually when I was asking you if you do this, because even when I do lose weight, I've got to say, nobody told my waist. So things are still tight around the tummy, you know, and Andrea's just put in the chat about jelly belly. I mean, what's that all about? Why is it that is the place I just can't lose it?
Yeah, it's really tricky, isn't it? And it's actually to some degree harder if you're really slim everywhere else and you've got this extra belly, because it's almost slightly out of proportion as well, which is not comfortable. Now, fat around the middle is directly associated with excessive levels of stress hormones, in particular cortisol. And that can happen before the menopause as well. So If you're in a state of chronic stress, then one of the things your body will do is encourage the storage of fat, specifically around the middle. And it comes back to that fight or flight response, because when our stress hormones are released, they are thinking imminent physical danger. They're thinking primitive response, saber-toothed tiger. And so they generate that fight or flight response so that you've got the strength to run and to fight and do what you need to do. Now, if you're in a state of chronic stress constantly, one of the things the body will think is, well, there's a permanent danger. I'm in this permanent red alert. So I need to make sure that Jackie's going to have enough energy and strength to fight and to run. So what it will do is it will encourage the storage of fat so that you don't process food, in particular sugar, as energy. You store it instead, and you store it right around the middle because it's nice and close to the liver, so it can be converted back quickly when the danger comes. Of course, the danger doesn't come, and there you are stuck with this fat around the middle, which is really difficult to shift, because if you stay in the state of chronic stress, you can be having a really restricted diet and still not losing any weight. And it's one of the challenges I see very often with menopausal women, because first of all, you've got that stress factor going on. I mean, let's face it, midlife is a hugely stressful time. But then you've got the hormonal factor coming in, because what I've just described can happen at any age. You know, it might be someone in their early 30s struggling with this. But fat around the middle is also what I like to call the body's plan C. Plan B for the menopause is that as the ovaries stop producing your sex hormones, your adrenal glands are now programmed to produce a weak form of estrogen post-menopause. Now, because your adrenal glands also produce your stress hormones, that will take precedence, because in principle, the stress response is a life-saving response, and it's your body's job to keep you alive. So it will prioritize that, which means that poor old estrogen doesn't get a look in from the adrenal glands. And so your body's scrabbling around and thinking, well, for heaven's sake, my plan B, my backup generator emergency response hasn't worked. So plan C is, I know what I'll do. I'll store fat around the middle, because fat around the middle has got its own hormone profile, unlike fat in other parts of your body, like bingo wings or whatever. And so it will store estrogen. And so that's another way the body's got of trying to help you. From a hormonal perspective, which of course doesn't help you when you are looking on from a weight management perspective. So essentially, the more stressed you are, the more fat you're likely to have around the middle, and the harder it will be to shift until you manage to bring all that down.
And all of that makes me feel even more stressed. You've got this vicious cycle going on, haven't you? Because you're doing your best and things, but life can make you stressed. Menopause can make you stressed. Anxiety levels are higher anyway.
Yeah.
And now I'm feeling like, what's got to give? How do I change this picture? And actually, Jackie, I followed your advice last year at the beginning of the year with your eating fruit and vegetables. That really helped. Perhaps we can talk about intermittent fasting later, because that might be the next thing I try to avoid this plateau that I seem to have achieved. But it is a matter of, where do you start? You know, because we are where we are, aren't we? And
we are where we are. It's there. I think the first thing you've got to try and think about is, what can you actively do to manage your stress? Now, what is the source of stress? You can't necessarily automatically leave the job, leave the situation, whatever it is that's making you stressed. But you can start to think about things like mindfulness, yoga, getting fresh air, not overloading your schedule, taking time out for you. All of these things are things you have to think about. From a nutritional perspective, the single best thing to do is to focus on blood sugar balance. Because if you keep your blood sugar stable, it's going to help your weight management in tons of ways. First of all, every time your blood sugar crashes, your body releases stress hormones, adrenaline and cortisol. So you might not feel stressed. You might not think, oh, there's a lot going on, but there's a lot of stress still going on inside, physiological stress that you might not have identified. So if you keep your blood sugar balanced, that's going to really help. And the great thing about stable blood sugar is that if your blood sugar doesn't crash, then you're going to be able to go through the day much more easily, because low blood sugar specifically generates cravings for sugary food and refined carbohydrates, something quick and easy that will get you back on that nice blood sugar balance. So the trick is twofold. You need to have complex carbohydrates, so fiber and protein with every meal and snack. Now, that's what's going to keep it stable. And that's why my 40 fruit and veg challenge to you last year worked so well, because vegetables are an outstanding source of fiber. They fill you up, they keep you going for longer. So swapping from those white foods, white bread, white rice, white pasta, to whole grain foods, brown bread, brown rice, brown pasta, the vegetables, fruits with an edible skin, which is where the fiber hangs out, they're all great sources of complex carbohydrate. And you marry that with the protein, because protein's hard to digest. It slows down the release of the carbohydrate even further, really keeps you going for longer. So good sources of protein would be the classic animal proteins like meat, fish, or eggs, or the lovely plant proteins, lentils, chickpeas, beans, soya, tofu, hummus, nuts, seeds, quinoa. But whenever you're about to eat, really think about getting that protein in. Because if you're someone who's prone to grazing and snacking and getting the munchies, then having that lovely blood sugar balance, lots of protein in your diet will really help.
And that's interesting that you say that, and you know, the portions for me that I learned from you around the amount of protein, because you know when you were saying about before about how much you have on your plate, and actually having a smaller plate and putting, was it your fist over your, that's what I do with my protein now every time I've got a plate. Make sure it's not too much, because it's so easy, isn't it, to have a really big chicken fillet or a really big piece of steak and things.
Well, to be honest, I'm less worried about that than the really big potato and the really big rice, the really big pasta. Because in my experience, most women don't overdo the protein. In fact, I am hard put to it in my nutrition clinic to actually get women to eat enough protein, because often they only have it about once a day. So really where people tend to trip up is they have much larger protein portions of starch. So bread, rice, pasta, potatoes often fills up half the plate, and it should really only be a fist size per portion, about the same size as your protein. You know, unless you're training at elite level, competitive level for marathons or triathlons, even if you're going to the gym just once a day, it absolutely doesn't warrant large amounts of starch. You can have small amounts of starch. And it's something I typically see. Very often women will come to the clinic because they want to lose weight, and they say, do you know what? I have a really healthy diet. And I look at their food diary and I think, yeah, they're right. They do have a really healthy diet. The problem is there's just too much of it. So it's not that they're eating the usual culprits of, you know, donuts and chocolate. It's that they're just having large portions every day for every meal. And sometimes that's quite tricky. You know, perhaps, you know, if your partner has large portions, or sometimes if they're doing the cooking, they'll give you their size portions. And that we don't need, compared to 10 years ago, we just don't need that much. So when you're looking at protein, I see someone's just put the question up, you'll be looking at a fist-sized portion of whatever the protein is. So a small chicken breast, a salmon steak, a couple of dollops of hummus or quinoa. Don't worry about sort of weighing foods, because the reality is that different foods that are rich in protein have different amounts of protein in. But if you go roughly for the fist size, with your, particularly with your lunch and your dinner, that, and then pattern that out on your plate. 1 fist of protein, 1 fist of starch, 2 fists of vegetables, 1 leafy green, 1 other veg. And then you've got actually a lot less on the plate.
What about anybody that doesn't eat veg?
Well, I mean,
is fruit better?
The problem with fruit is that it's not as rich in fiber. It's higher in sugar. Natural sugars for sure, it's got lots of vitamins and minerals in, but you're not going to be getting the fiber. So I wonder if the individual who can't eat, if it's a can't eat veg, which is relatively unusual but can happen, then maybe think about things like pulses, lentils, chickpeas, beans, because they're a wonderful combination of both protein and complex carbohydrate. If you really can't eat any vegetables at all, and it's a thing about taste, there are ways of sort of training yourself by having little portions, tiny bits of things, trying that out. Or if it's a matter that you can't eat a plate of broccoli because it makes you feel nauseous, you could try some of the tricks that people do for kids, which is put all the veg in and blitz it in a tomato puree sauce type thing, put that on the pizza. It's the kind of thing you'll do with kids, and there might be mushrooms and onions and all manner of things in there, but it's all been blended up and it sits on a pizza, so they've no idea they're eating vegetables. So that might be a trick. But really, I would urge you to eat more vegetables, because leafy greens are such a big deal for women in midlife. They're packed with calcium, more calcium, twice as much per 100 grams as milk. They're packed with iron, with magnesium, vitamin K, vitamin C, so super healthy for you and great for your bones as well.
And of course, they are great in smoothies, aren't they?
Yes, that's another trick, actually. But the trouble with smoothies a little bit is that, particularly if you've got one of those mega blenders, is that it will start to break down the fibre a little bit. You'll still have some fibre in there compared to juicing, but if you're looking for that complex carbohydrate, if you can genuinely eat the whole vegetable, it would be better. That's why I oriented that person towards maybe the pulses, if they really can't eat any veg at all for some bizarre reason.
Okay, and one of the things that I haven't tried yet from your challenges at the beginning of the year is intermittent fasting. I struggle with that one because I wake up desperately needing my breakfast and then very often I go to the gym and don't eat dinner till I come home. So is that a possible, maybe intermittent fasting will get me beyond this plateau?
Yeah, now I'm a big fan of intermittent fasting, but not all fasting is equal, and it's not for everyone. I think anybody who has, for example, a condition like an underactive thyroid, or if you're in a state of chronic stress, or diabetic, of course, you'd have to be much more careful about that. If you're somebody who feels a bit dizzy first thing in the morning, if you don't have anything to eat, then intermittent fasting isn't necessarily going to be very suitable for you. I'm also not a massive fan of the 5-2 diet, which is where you eat normally for 5 days of the week. And I say normally careful diet, not normally anything I like diet. And then for 2 days, you have a very restricted sort of 500 to 600 calories. I find that tends to work better for men, mainly because most men haven't been on a diet since they were about 16. And so their metabolism is the first time they've ever encountered any kind of restriction, and they lose their weight quite quickly. And if they're doing it with their partner, very often I see women saying, I've lost half a pound and I've been super strict, and he's lost 6 pounds, and it's all about the metabolism. So what I tend to prefer is, I'm seeing these lovely lunch options coming up, which is quite distracting on the chat. Well done, everyone. What I tend to prefer is time restricted eating, where you eat within a window, an 8-hour window. It's called a 16-8. And you would perhaps have your breakfast at 10 o'clock and finish eating your evening meal by 6 o'clock. And then the rest of that time, a large portion of which you're asleep, of course, you're not eating. It gives the body, it's great for people also who have digestive problems, by the way, really just helps to ease things. And it gives your body time to catch up with itself and to process everything. And it can really help to speed up the metabolism. And what I love about that is that you haven't got this yo-yo up and down of calorie restriction that you've got with 5-2, which for women in our situation, we need our nutrition, and we don't want to be confusing our metabolism more than it's already confused. So you can eat a proper good blood sugar balancing breakfast, maybe have a light lunch, because it's quite tight, really. You might find you don't want 3 meals a day, so maybe it's some hummus and oatcakes mid-afternoon, and then you would have your nicely balanced out plate as I've described for your evening meal. And that can work incredibly well and be a great way of kickstarting things if you're struggling with a plateau, if you've done very well so far and it's all sort of stopped.
That's interesting, because when you said can kickstart, the thing about the intermittent fasting, for me, is is that for good then, or can I do it for a period of time to do a kickstart?
Oh no, you can absolutely do it for a period of time, absolutely. But what I would say, and I'm sure most of the women listening to this already know the answer to this, it is a marathon, not a sprint when you get to our age. I'm 55, by the way, and I do know how hard it is. So you've got to think that it's not going to be that, oh, we'll get the little black dress sorted by Saturday day. Those days are long gone. So you've got to be consistent. With weight management in midlife, consistency is everything. So if you're going to do the intermittent fasting, don't just do it for a week. You'd probably need to do it for a good couple of months, and then might maybe go back to a different route that you were doing before. Or if you're not doing intermittent fasting, you're just carefully managing your portions as I've described, then it just takes longer. So don't despair. You will get there, and your metabolism will start thinking, okay, no, we're on the downward trajectory. But it might take at least 2 months before you even see a bit of a difference, which is really hard to stick to when you think, well, blow it, what's the point? I've been at this 2 months and I might as well go and have a bar of chocolate because I've got nowhere. But that's actually, in my experience, the time where you need to stick there, because at about 2 months, it all generally starts to then get going if it hasn't before.
That's great, Jack. And I'll ask my colleague and friend Sally to join us and see what the conversation has been in chat. But it's interesting that you say about chocolate, because for me, when you say intermittent fasting, try it for a couple of months, I'm thinking there's always Christmas, there's always Easter, there's always the holiday, there's always my birthday, there's always somebody else's birthday. And I think, do I get the day off on those days? Can I sort of do intermittent fasting and then just sort of have 3 days off because it's a holiday or a festival or a birthday or whatever?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. It's largely going to depend on the individual because our metabolisms are all a little bit different. I would say it depends how often. People often say to me, oh, well, I have intermittent fasting and I do a cheat day at the weekend. And I say you're wasting time. Easter only comes once a year, so that's quite a different matter. And the odd bit here and there, fine. But if you're having a cheat day every week and you're not losing weight, you just got to lose the cheat day because it's just not helping. You're just sort of counterbalancing it. It's a bit the same as going to the gym religiously for 3 days a week, 3 times a week, and sitting on the sofa and not moving the rest of the time. It will just keep you there. It won't bring things down.
Fantastic. Sorry. We've got loads and loads of questions and loads of really great sharing. You say some amazing lunch ideas and sharing what's working for people. So really appreciate everyone sharing. And I know we've got quite a few Deborah Garlicks. We've got there's a Zoom gremlin going on where people are joining. So we're getting lots of different comments. So apologies if your name's not coming up right on the chat. But one of the first things that's coming up time and time again from lots of people is around the relationship between HRT and weight gain, because some people are saying they've been on HRT for a few months and they've put on loads of weight. Some people are saying they're scared of going on HRT because of putting weight on. Others have shared experience saying that HRT hasn't had an impact, and some saying they've listened to podcasts around if you get your estrogen levels right, then actually it can help support weight loss. So any thoughts around whether HRT causes weight gain, can have an impact on weight gain?
Well, all the research is really relatively clear that HRT in and of itself does not cause weight gain. And what often people need to sort of recognize is, were you just going to be gaining that weight anyway for the other reasons we've talked about around midlife? Because there's technically no interaction between the two. And doctors have been looking at this. And I remember talking to a doctor quite recently, and she was really struggling to persuade one of her patients who she felt would really benefit from HRT, because she was so worried about the weight gain. So she didn't do the HRT. She went off, and 3 months later she put on lots of weight anyway. and she wasn't taking HRT, but she just got to that point in life where things are slowing down and perhaps she hadn't been as careful as we sadly need to be now. So in principle, no, there isn't a connection. And I would say, I mean, I'm not a doctor, and food is my thing, not medicine, but I would say this, that if you are struggling with really awful menopause symptoms, then don't be frightened of HRT. It might be really helpful for you. And we have the right to go and find out about this stuff and just try it. If it doesn't suit you, well, fine. You don't have to keep taking it. But I wouldn't be suffering in silence thinking that HRT might actually make things worse and cause weight gain, because in principle it really shouldn't do.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much.
Did you know, Sally, that there are so many different types of HRT available, so many different combinations, and certainly when we've done weight gain and HRT before, if one is causing you to gain weight, then through bloating rather than proper weight gain, then perhaps one of the other products might be better for you. So, we all individually respond differently to hormones.
Absolutely. And I think, people are sharing, their experiences. And I think absolutely reviewing that with your medical practitioners, whether it's your GP menopause specialist, to explore what might be going on for you in terms of a reaction to what you're taking, to find that right preparation, because it isn't a one size fits all. And these are big changes that our bodies are going through. So finding that right thing, I think, is really important. Someone's talked about that they found that don't believe they're suffering with stress, but everything's quite balanced in their life. They've not changed what they're eating and drinking and doing what they were doing in their kind of early 40s and their 30s, but they're still putting weight on. And I think that's definitely a frustration we have, isn't it, Jackie, that actually what we've always done before that may have really worked for us suddenly stops working.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is, it comes back to what I said before. If you're doing exactly what you were doing in your 30s and 40s, you're probably doing too much of it. You've got to eat less. Our metabolism doesn't need so much starch. And I would be looking at foods that really activate the satiety response, which is, it tells you when you are full. So that's going to be foods that are rich in protein and fat. So lots of women will say to me, I can't eat nuts because they're really high in calories, or I won't eat avocado. But these foods, first of all, let's be clear, the biochemical response of the body to eating fat, foods that contain fat, is not to turn it into fat. It is to create hormones, in particular sex hormones. So a very low fat diet is not going to help your cause. The first thing the body will do with excess carbohydrate is turn it to fat. That's the quickest and easiest way for us to gain weight, too much carbohydrate, not too much fat. I mean, obviously eat too much of anything and you will ultimately gain weight, but we shouldn't demonize fat. And foods that are rich in fat, which is mostly protein foods, have fat in as well, that they are going to keep you going. So make sure you've got that really good chunky bit of protein going on in the meal, because if you're feeling full, you're much less likely to be prone to the grazing. I'd encourage you also to keep a food diary, because I can't tell you the number of clients who come to see me in clinic and they said, oh my goodness, because they always complete a food diary before they come to see me. And they said, I hadn't realized I was eating that much, because you forget. Even if I said to you all now, what did you eat yesterday? You'd have to think hard. It's quite difficult to remember. And you can just grab a little something from the fridge without even counting that, because you're thinking, you've forgotten about that. You're thinking, well, my meals are the same. But are they though? Are they, proportions are perhaps too big, and are you grazing more than you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And someone talked about cravings and saying they're really struggling with cravings with certain foods, where it kind of almost feels really desperate, and it seems to have got much worse as they're going through menopause, and finding it really hard to leave those foods alone. What kind of advice would you give around managing cravings?
Well, again, it comes back to blood sugar balance, because if you're craving severely, then your stress hormones are now determining your food choices and not your brain. And when it comes to that, your hormones are going to win every time. So really go back to that basic I described, the protein, the fiber with every meal, every snack. And then if you find that after meals you've sort of got that what's next thing going on, then maybe consider something like licorice tea. Licorice tea is really quite sweet, so it helps to satisfy that requirement for a little something, but it also helps to balance your blood sugar. So it's a really great 2-in-1.
Fantastic, brilliant, thank you. And any suggestions around healthy snacks? I know we've talked about having protein and fibre in meals. Any suggestions that people can really look to go to, like the licorice tea, that might really help with managing that blood sugar level throughout the day?
Well, if you want to stick with the protein fibre combo, a piece of fruit and a palmful, not a handful. I can get a lot of nuts in my hand. Palmful, so 5 or 6, 6 or 7 almonds maybe, or 4 or 5 walnuts, because they're a bit bigger, aren't they? That would be the kind of balance. Or maybe some hummus and carrot sticks, protein fiber, hummus with or nut butters with oat cakes, 1 or 2 oat cakes. Some people have things like peanut butter and they smear it on their apple, and then they've got that sort of, again, that protein fiber combo. For people who are in the UK, I am a big fan of bounce balls. You can get their little balls of nuts and seeds with all manner of different flavors. There really is something for everyone. There's a coconut one, there's a apple and cinnamon. There's a gorgeous orange and cacao one, and they are packed with protein. They're a great thing to have in the handbag for a quick blast of protein and fibre if you're on the run.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. Really great thing. We've got quite a few questions around intermittent fasting, around things like how many calories should people be consuming in their window, and things like that. And I think, again, that calorie counting and focusing on that, just some thoughts on that, Jackie.
Well, the beautiful thing about intermittent fasting and all the research around that is that you can eat proper meals. You don't have to be counting calories in that window, because the point is you're fasting in the 16 hours. So I'm not suggesting that you stuff yourself with donuts and muffins and every dessert under the sun. I'd want you to be eating sensibly, but equally it is very much about making sure that you're having really good meals in there, and so you're not feeling deprived. If you feel deprived, you're not going to stick for very long. That's the problem. So it's not about counting calories, it's about getting that nutrition in.
Fantastic, thank you. I know we've not been able to answer everyone's questions, and we will have a look through and see if there's additional signposting. Jackie, did you want to just share something?
Yes, I did, because I saw that somebody said, oh, I joined late, and what was that challenge? The challenge is 40 fruit and veg in a week. And the trick is, it's got to be a different, you can have more than one each time, but it only counts once. I'd aim for sort of 4 fruit, 1 veg, or skew the veg, and you'll do that over a week. It's hard work, but it's really great. It mixes up your recipes a bit, and it will really fill you up, and it worked for Deborah.
Fantastic. It certainly did work for me. Thank you very much, Jackie. I would recommend it. So what we can do is actually share that resource to everyone, and some of the questions that we didn't get to. There's a question about fatigue, for example. We'll go through those, and we'll add some of the workshops before. Jackie, you did a brilliant.
We did one on fatigue.
We did on fatigue, so we'll make sure we share that too. Absolutely. And thank you very much, Sally, for representing so many themes there, and really appreciate that. And I think we need to share something else too, Jackie. I'm holding up your book here, and the reason—
whole section on weight loss in the book, everybody.
And we have someone actually shared in the chat, Jackie, to say that they'd read your book and what a huge difference it had made to them from really struggling. So really appreciate that. So I know people really appreciate the book and the impact it can have for people.
Thank you, that's great.
I think an extra thing that we need to give a shout out now, Jackie's book, this is quite remarkable. Jackie's book is being serialized by the Daily Mail.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit more about that, Jackie. So great that you're able to join us today.
Thank you. Yes.
There's more information. And when is it, Jackie?
Saturday, Sunday and Monday. So this coming Saturday, I've just had a very exciting photo shoot earlier this week, where they got me in a red trouser suit. Who knew I would ever do that? And there you are.
Well, I mean, I'm sure it's absolutely brilliant, because the thing I love about this book, and I'm sure we'll come across in the serialization, is that this is practical stuff. I can do this. And I think there are lots of different ideas. Like, I love the ideas of the swaps. You'll be pleased to know I no longer have cheesy Wotsits. They are not my demon anymore. I've replaced them with artichokes. I hope
that's amazing. So good for your gut as well. Well done.
Are they? Oh, that's good news. So that's the book, and look for the Daily Mail on Saturday, Sunday, Monday for more information from Jackie. And of course, we'll send those resources out. And once again, Jackie, Sally, thank you very much. And to everybody else, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Have a fabulous week.